like you want to. Okay? So let's see what's next on our list. Okay, so yeah, this is super important. I hope if there's a distraction that happens right now, I want you to come back and watch this video, okay? Because actually, this part that I'm going to talk to you about is it's something that I think all of us need to know about, but when you're in the midst of it, you can't see. Oftentimes, you can't see it or hear it, unless you've already gone through that lesson and you already have clarity about it. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So when you're doing any kind of personal development work, whether it's in this program or some other program or your own work that you're doing on your own, whatever it is, whenever you're doing your own personal development work, guaranteed, if you're really working through your stuff, you are going to hit resistances. And the resistances can be like drama in your life, or things being really, really busy, or your body can create resistance by making you tired, or have an illness, or catch a cold or the flu or whatever. And like that's your system's response, resisting. Because here's the thing, even though we all know that we want to do our personal development work, we don't want to be struggling with old stuff anymore, the old patterns that are holding us back. But there's part of us, usually on an unconscious level, there's part of us that wants things to stay the same and not change, not grow, not work through the hard stuff, because it's easier and maybe feels safer to just stay where you are. Hey, Zahira, I see you on here live. Hey, babe. So that's why sometimes we want to avoid our personal breakthrough, our personal development work. And in fact, when you are on the verge of a big breakthrough, oftentimes that's when the resistances will pop up. So I'm going to tell you some things that I've observed, and I promise, I'm not talking about one person. This is stuff that I've observed over and over and over again as I have guided one-on-one clients and students in my individual classes, in my Reiki programs, and in this program and in similar programs. Okay, so what I notice is that one resistance that will come up is that the person will feel like they're really struggling in their life. And so because of that, a lot of fear will come up. So the struggle could be financial struggle, which I totally get it. I have been there. It can feel like the world is weighing down on you when financial struggles or changes happen. Other kinds of life struggles, relationship issues, and emotional struggles, like just feeling depressed or anxious or overwhelmed. All of those emotions getting stirred up when you're on the verge of a big breakthrough. So all of the emotional resistance that comes up, like this big monster, right? Like, oh my God, I can't do this. And so people will shut down because they feel overwhelmed and they're struggling emotionally. The flip side of that is when somebody feels that they are doing really well. Like, oh, I'm doing really well these days, so therefore I'm going to stop doing this program or this class, or I'm going to stop doing this work. Now take a minute and think about that. So from my perspective, I'll be sitting back like nodding, going, that is really fascinating. Now, first and foremost, what I think is that everybody should have the freedom to choose what is best for them And sometimes people are choosing to cycle out of a program, like I'm ready to move on to something else. That's a natural progression that does happen with people, and sometimes people really they really are ready to move into a different cycle, and I can tell, I can feel it, I can see it, like I can really just tell intuitively if it's like, yes, the person has really come to a place of completion and they're ready to move on, or if it's more of an avoidance, like, oh, I'm doing really well, so now I'm going to avoid doing the rest of the work, or I'm telling myself I'm doing really well. Like, maybe I'm not really telling myself the truth, right? So when we're struggling emotionally or when we're doing really well, either way, telling ourselves that we don't need to do the personal development work anymore because either it feels too hard and it's too emotionally overwhelming, or, hey, I'm doing fine, so I'm going to avoid this stuff. And usually when people tell me, when people tell me, oh, I'm doing fine, I'm ready to move, I'm ready to not do this anymore. Now, I'm not speaking of the people who really have come to a place of completion, but I'm talking about the people who are like avoiding something. I can always tell. And usually right before they come to me and say, oh, I'm doing so well, they've told me, maybe a few days or a few weeks prior to that, we unbury something really, really big that, sorry, my nose itches. We unbury something really, really big that they know they need to work on, like deep shadow stuff. And so, not too long after that, they go into avoidance. Like, oh, bye, Maya. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I really, really want you to stick with this because I see how much, how much you can grow from it. I just see so much potential here, and like you're on the verge of this huge breakthrough, and then you're like, bye, laters. And my role is not to control people. So I will give nudges, like, I'll point things out, or I will make myself available to connect and talk. But I'm not going to force it. Like, if the person is like, really in resistance and pushing away, then I'm going to be like, okay, just release. I just release. So that's something, like I said, I've been doing this work for a long time. So those are patterns that I've noticed a lot. And the thing is if you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see. And so this is why I like to teach people things like ahead of time, so that now that you have this awareness, when it happens, when the resistance happens, you're going to go, oh, I see you, resistance. I see what that is right there. Okay. And then you can be in awareness. You can be in observer mode and maybe respond a little bit differently. And then let me see here. Okay. So I talked about resistance showing up as like emotional struggles, or, oh, you're doing really, really well. Either one of those is resistance. Another type of resistance that comes up, and this is really important. It's so important to learn about it now, so that when or if it comes up for real, then you'll recognize it. So one of the things that happens, not just with me, but any program that you might be in, any teacher or mentor that you might have, part of the dynamic, if it is a personal development kind of program, or even like energy healing, like there's a lot of stuff, like if you were to take Reiki training or something, even though that topic, it's not like the personal development topic, there's healing, there's like by default, your stuff starts to heal. And so there is personal development that happens anyway. So whether you're in a personal development program, Reiki, energy healing, like yoga, teacher training, like any of that, it ends up really transforming you, right? Whoever your teacher or mentor is, sometimes they can be in the role where they are really inspiring you and sharing valuable information. But other times, they can be in the role where they are teaching you, but it's in a role of opposition, where usually unintentionally, something that they do or say or a way of being triggers you. Okay. Now, so let me just, what do I want to say about this? So for, let's get specific. So let's say there's something that I do that triggers you, or something that I say that triggers you. Now, first of all, I'm a human being, and so it's possible that might happen. Just know, I want to tell you that the person that I am, I would never intentionally do something to trigger you. There's a lot of different kinds of personalities out there in the world, and I know that there are people who intentionally try to trigger people because, not saying that they're bad people, but that's just, that's just kind of how they roll. So no judgment there, but that's not who I am. So I would never intentionally try to trigger you or try to say something that pisses you off or whatever. You get the idea. But I also acknowledge that on a spiritual level, I care about you so much and about the process that we're going through together that on a spiritual level, I have given permission to try to be okay with you being pissed off at me sometimes. Now, I have an old, long-standing aversion to people not being happy with me. So, like, that's something that I've really had to work through, is to say, you know what? Your growth and your healing and your personal transformation is more important to me than any discomfort that I might occasionally have, where I'm like, ooh, I can tell you're pissed at me about something, whatever it is. So that is less important. My discomfort over that is less important than my role in being present for you to work through your stuff. And with that being said, you don't have to work through it alone. Anytime somebody has triggered you, intentionally or unintentionally, I really believe that communication is really important. Hopefully in any situations where there's triggering going on, the other party will be open to communication. So if I've triggered you and I have no idea that I have, then, reach out and communicate with me. It could be that I fell short that day. Maybe you didn't say or do the right thing, or it could be that there's an old wound that needs to be healed, right? Or it could be some of both. But if we can just connect and talk about it in that observer mode kind of way, like with curiosity, like, oh, there must be something really juicy here if both of our spirits have felt on a spiritual level enough trust in each other that we could have this little trigger thing happen. There must be some really juicy transformation that's getting ready to happen. Okay? So that's how I see it. Like, I really want to connect with you. Let's talk and let's work through this juicy stuff. okay? But oftentimes what happens is if somebody gets triggered by their mentor or teacher, they will shut down and say, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm going somewhere else or doing something else. And the reason, I think, is because they're so in the middle of being triggered, and so they can't, they're just not able to go into observer mode, I totally get it. But now, having an understanding of this ahead of time, now, if any of those resistances come up, the emotional turmoil, or the I'm doing really well right now, so I don't need this, or Maya has really triggered me, or whoever the mentor is, any of those are resistances. And it just means that there's a big breakthrough that you are so close to, okay? So I don't even know if I've explained all of this before in the past, or maybe I've touched on it a bit, but I see it so often, and I really feel like, again, if you know about it ahead of time, then you can go into more awareness, more observer mode with it, even in the midst of being triggered. You can go, oh, okay, so what's this about? Okay. I do encourage you to, if you are having whatever resistances you might be having, I encourage you to reach out to me, send me a Facebook message. And, I know I was talking about the free 15-minute every quarter that everybody's going to have for the unforeseen future. But that doesn't mean that if you've already used your 15 minutes, I'm not going to shut you out. If you're like, help, I'm really hitting a wall here, major resistance, and I have all this mental stuff coming up, emotional stuff coming up, I want to be there to support you. So we'll hop on to the phone or video conferencing. But what won't work is if I try to connect with you, if I say, hey, let's talk, and I get a no, nope. If the response is, if I try to reach out to communicate and the response is, nope, not going to talk about it, Maya, we're not going to discuss it, but here's the thing, with stuff that's really complicated, we can't really, we can Facebook message about it, but if there's the triggering thing going on, really the best way is to have what I call a clearing conversation. And a clearing conversation is a conversation between two people. It can be friends, work associates, student and teacher, whatever, where you sit down and you really just express how you're feeling. This was said and this is how it made me feel. Really just putting it out there, and the other person listening, and then the other person has an opportunity to share their part while the other person listens. And in that conversation, the intention is to let go of our stories that we have about the situation and to be able to communicate while also being in observer mode. So that whenever there's some kind of issue that comes up with my friends or whoever it may be, I love to have a clearing conversation. Without that, then communication tends to break down. If people try to resolve it via email or Facebook Messenger or something, that is the best way to just have a total breakdown in communication, and then usually the relationship ends or it becomes very distant. So so communication, gotta do it, okay? Well, you don't have to. You can choose not to, but just know that in any situation you have the opportunity to, what time it is, you have the opportunity to work things out or not work things out, and you're making a choice there. And I'm here to honor and respect your choice, whatever that may be. Okay? But I'm here to have a clearing conversation, or to help you get clarity about the emotional resistance that's coming up for you, or whatever it may be. Okay, so let's see here. Next thing, and then if you have any thoughts or comments about this, please do comment. Please let me know. Oh, I just put in my notes here that I had an example. So I was using myself as an example, but let me use a different example. So it doesn't even have to be, a personal transformation mentor. It could be like you are hiring a personal trainer, and you're meeting with them like a couple times a week to work out, and they're really pushing you. And after a while, you're like, I'm too sleepy. I don't want to get out of bed and go work out. I really hate my personal trainer. It's like, my personal trainer pushes me too hard. I don't want to do this anymore, blah, blah, blah. Even though before you were all gung-ho, like, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to do this exercise. I'm going to do that. And I know this personal trainer is going to push me, but I think that's a good thing. But then you start to be like, oh, I don't like this anymore. And so you start to really not like your personal trainer. Like, maybe it even becomes personal. Like, I can't stand that person. So annoying. They say this and they say that. Like, that's projection. Okay. So it's like total avoidance. It's like you're projecting stuff at that person in order to avoid, because you don't want to do it anymore. Now, again, it's totally your freedom to maybe change personal trainers or change your mind. Like, you have free will. You could change your mind and be like, you know what? I don't think having a personal trainer is for me. Like, if you really get clarity about that and you're really being honest with yourself, then you could make that decision. I don't think having a personal trainer is for me. I think doing like some other program, a dance class or whatever, is better for me. I think I've finished out my personal training cycle. I'm ready for this other avenue. Or are you just avoiding? So it's up to you to really be honest with yourself and get that clarity. Okay, so that's an example, is the personal training example, because we all have resistance, most of us, when we're doing workouts that are maybe more challenging than what we're used to, right? Okay, so that was the main thing that I was going to talk about today. And, you don't have to just apply it to your relationship with me or your relationship with any program that you're working through with me, but apply it to all of your personal healing work and every teacher that you ever have, every program that you ever do, every personal development program, every healing program, all of it. Apply these ideas. Remember what I've said about resistance, okay, and how it works. It's so insidious. It can scramble your brain, and really the whole idea is your unconscious is running the show sometimes and trying to just keep you safe, and so that you're not changing, so that everything just stays the same. Okay, so now you know. Now you're smarter than your unconscious, because you have an awareness now. Okay. Okay, so announcements. Next announcement. This month, I'm